Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And this is kind of a weird video to do on this channel because this is more of a booktube channel. So if you don't know, I have 3 other channels. I have a vlog channel where I vlog daily. I have a booktube channel where I talk about books. And I have a drama channel where I talk about YouTube drama. So I get to do 4 different things on a daily basis, and I love every bit of it. It's so much fun for me. So anyway, I had asked on my vlog if people had suggestions for stories that they wanted to hear on my Peterisms channel. So anyway, in preparation for me going to Miami. And if you're watching this right now, I'm currently in Miami. If you're watching this today that I posted this. So I pre-filmed some videos, and this is one of them. And but I started getting ready for this video, and I started crying, so this will be an emotional video, just get prepared. What we're going to talk about today is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and why it is my favorite book of life, and also my favorite movie. And so I got to give you the history a little bit, and really it's not so much the story of To Kill a Mockingbird as it is the story of how it played out in my life. And this book has, I think, profoundly changed me. Well, that's not actually the way to say it. I wouldn't say it profoundly changed me. I would say it profoundly molded me into who I am. It has been in my life, honestly, for almost as long as I can remember. I think I've gotten the ages, I think, all over the place. So my mom's friend gave me this book, actually, and she inscribed it. It was for my birthday, and it was on 1986, so I would have been 14 years old. I think that, and we had seen the play together, because she said, "Peter, happy birthday. The book is always more detailed than the play." And I think we saw the book maybe when I was like 12 or 11, and then I think I read it in 9th grade. I thought I had read it in 6th grade, but I remember seeing the play, and then my mom, we went into the Indianapolis Repertory Theater with my mom's friend and her daughter, and then when we came home, I loved the play so much. I can remember the actress that played Scout to this day, and I fell in love with it, and I just so badly wanted to know the whole story. So my mom got the book, and she later told me that she asked several of her friends if she thought that it was too grown up for me, and they're like, "No, I think if you read it with Peter, you know." I'd already seen the play. I don't know how much of it at that point I understood. So we read the book together, and I would remember every night, we would read a little bit of it, and we would talk about it and what I thought about it and things like that. And so the principles that come with this book were molded into who I am and the way that I thought as I grew up, you know, empathy, compassion, kindness, love, understanding, things like that, patience even. And so when people ask me, who's a role model in your life, I often say To Kill a Mockingbird or Atticus Finch, you know, the father in To Kill a Mockingbird, because I do feel that the book and the characters represented role models for me. And, you know, I'm not a believer in censorship. I just don't believe in it at all. I believe that we should sit down with our children and read books and watch movies, much like my parents did, and listen to music, and talk about what those words, lyrics, scenes mean, and explain the backstory to them, if that makes sense. So if you do not know what To Kill a Mockingbird is about, and you have never read the book, and you've never heard of the book, and you've never, I think everybody should read it, but let me read to you. It is considered the great American novel. And let me read to you on the back what it's about. The classic, unforgettable novel about growing up in the South and the human values and rights that belong to us all. A classic of our time, To Kill a Mockingbird now celebrates 25 years of publication. A first novel that became an instant bestseller, widely hailed by critics. The book won a Pulitzer Prize in 1961 and was later translated into 10 languages and made into a film, now also a classic. The story of a childhood in a sleepy southern town and the crisis of race and conscience that rocked it. The novel is read and enjoyed all over the world. Harper Lee always considered her book to be a simple love story. It is regarded today as a masterpiece of American literature. I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about it. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, if you were going to explain this book to somebody that had never read it, Peter, what would you talk about? And I would say to you, it's really the story of Jean Louise Finch, who is Scout in the book. And her, you know, love affair with her father, who is just such a great role model. Gregory Peck played him in the movie. And Mary Badham, who now goes and lectures about the book, played it. And if you haven't read the recent controversy, there is another book that they found at the end of Harper Lee's life called Go Set a Watchman, and they published it. I love the book. A lot of people don't. And the reason why is because in this book, the book deals a lot with racism, and Atticus Finch's standing up for civil rights and things like that. In Go Set a Watchman, his beliefs have changed some as Jean Louise has grown up into an adult. And so it's questionable a little bit how he feels. I feel like the two books fit together perfectly, and I love both books. But, you know, I was thinking, like, how would you explain this book to somebody if they had never read it? And really what it's about is it's the story of Jean Louise Scout and her, you know, love affair, not romantically, obviously, but with her father, who is just a pillar of his community and such a, you know, a respected man in his community. I just stopped the video because Pee-Pee started barking. Okay, so anyway, and it's the story about her growing up in the South and her father, who is an attorney. Atticus represents Tom Robinson, who is a man that is accused of raping a white woman. And the book, when reading the book, you know he didn't do it. I mean, it's a fact that he didn't do it. And, you know, it's the trial and all of this, and the kids being very intrigued by this, and the whole town, you know, saying that Atticus should not defend this man, and there being all this kind of chatter about it. And it's really about the difference between, you know, right and wrong, good and evil, things like that, you know, and how to be in the worst situations possible, how to be a good, kind, compassionate person. And we don't only learn that through Atticus. We learn a lot of that through Tom Robinson, who is the man that is accused of this rape. And you learn it through Calpurnia, and you learn it through, you know, all the other people that are in the town. And it's just, for me, it's one of the most fantastic books and movies of life. I learned so much from it. But on a very superficial level, it represents home for me. It represents front porches. It represents summer. It represents fall. My mom and I would watch it every fall together as the leaves were falling outside. It was the book ends on Halloween, and when Scout is dressed up like a ham. And, you know, we would watch the movie, and we'd always have it play in the background. I've probably seen the movie, I don't know, 150 times, no lie. I mean, I own it in VHS and DVD time and time again. The anniversary edition, I own it. It's on Netflix. You can go watch it on Netflix right now. It's fantastic. And the music soundtrack is just unbelievable. It's one of the best soundtracks to a movie ever made. And, I don't know, there's just something about it that is just, it is innocence to me. And I feel as if I grew up, I saw the world, blessedly so, very much the same way as Scout did. You know, with this kind of naivete and innocence. And I'm thankful for that. You know, I'm thankful that I was, you know, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and I grew up with a lot of negativity around me, but at the same time, I was allowed to be a kid. And, you know, I was allowed to see the world through kids' eyes, even the tragedy. I don't know if that makes sense, but there was no forcing for me to be a grown-up. There was no forcing for me to, you know, having to do these things. I took care of my alcoholic mother as a child. I don't know if that makes sense, but so when I would watch this movie, I could assimilate with that. You know, I could assimilate you know, Scout having to deal with worldly issues as a child. And I still relate to her today. And when I read Go Set a Watchman, it deals very much with, you know, feet of clay of parents, that as our parents grow up, we don't see them so much as these, you know, pillars of society, these gods that we saw them as we were younger. We see them as men. We see them as women. We see them as fallible, you know? And I think that that's the most valuable lesson that Go Set a Watchman teaches. And that's why I think both books need to be read together. I think it mystifies people a lot why this book and movie are just like, they stand out for above and beyond the rest for me. And I don't think it's just because of the book or the story or the characters. I think it's really a lot the connection that I had to it with my mom. You know, every fall, my mom and I would eat chili dinners and make raw apple muffins and cook in the kitchen, and we would play it in the background in the other room, and we would sit down and watch it, and, you know, we would quote lines from the movie. It was our movie. It was our book together. And I don't have anybody that really understands that love today of this book or that movie around me. You know, and I think that it is something that takes years and years to cultivate a relationship with somebody about something like that. If you have a best friend and you guys quote lines from a movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, you know? It's very much like the scene of Bridesmaids. Have you seen Bridesmaids, the movie? I love the scene at the very end when Wilson Phillips comes out and she's like this, like, you know, singing to her best friend, because I think that's that kind of relationship where you share something of pop culture, and my mother and I shared that together. I did a read-along, a group reads in October or November. This is the part where I'm going to get emotional. I did a group reads in October or November where I read this book on my BookTube channel. And I listened to the Audible version by Sissy Spacek because I love Sissy Spacek and I had never heard it on Audible, so I wanted to hear somebody read it. And I would not recommend the Audible version by Sissy Spacek. I love Sissy Spacek, but she changed a lot of the ways that I know that Scout says them because of the movie and because of the book, and it just wasn't the same for me. It changed something for me. I don't know. I just heard it in a different way. It just kind of fell short. It didn't really do a lot for me. But, you know, when I got to the end of it, I knew it would be the last time I ever read the book. I know the story inside and out. I could read it again 500 times if I wanted to. But there are a lot of books that I want to read in my life. There are a lot of stories that I want to know that I don't. And I know the ins and outs of the story. And I don't need to read it again to know how it begins, ends, and lives. I just don't, you know? And so rereading it this last time for me was kind of like closure. This part of this relationship that I had had with my mom that died with her 10 years ago when she passed away, you know? And what I really realized was that I needed to allow my mom to die so that I could live. I needed to allow this book to be done so that I could move on to other books and other stories. I will always love this book. I will watch the movie probably for the rest of my life. But the book doesn't hold the same memories for me anymore when I don't have anybody to share it with. And I don't want to just sit up here, you know, for the rest of my life and say this is my favorite book. I want to have other favorite books. I want to experience other people's stories and other characters. And so it's time, I think, for me to go on. And as you can see, emotionally, it's very, very hard for me. Because this book is not just a book for me. It's a part of my life. At the end of the book, Boo Radley, who I named the dog after, it meant so much to me, saves Jim and Scout from an attack. This is the man they've been afraid of their entire childhood. Their whole book is Boo Radley because he's a mystery to them. They don't know anything about him. And then she meets him and she realizes that he's just very innocent like she is, and there's nothing to be afraid of. And he becomes a friend, and so she walks him home. And as they're walking home, he had put things in this tree for them, little dolls and pennies and gum and things like that. Neighbors bring food with death and flowers with sickness and little things in between. Boo is our neighbor. He gave us 2 soap dolls, a broken watch and chain, a pair of good luck pennies, and our lives. But neighbors give in return. We never put back into that tree what we took out of it. We had given him nothing, and it made me sad. I turned to go home. Streetlights winked down the street all the way to town. I had never seen our neighborhood from this angle. There were Miss Maudie's, Miss Stephanie's. There was our house. I could see the porch swing. Miss Rachel's house was beyond us, plainly visible. I could even see Miss DeBoe's. I looked behind me. To the left of the brown door was a long shuttered window. I walked to it, stood in front of it, and turned around. In daylight, I thought, you could see to the post office corner. Daylight. In my mind, the night faded. And then at the end, she's talking about Atticus. He unhooked my overalls, leaned me against him, and pulled them off. He held me up with one hand and reached for my pajamas with the other. Yeah, and they all thought it was Stoner's boy messing up their clubhouse and throwing ink all over it, and he guided me to the bed and sat me down. He lifted my legs and put me under the cover. And they chased him and never could catch him because they didn't know what he looked like. And Atticus, when they finally saw him, why, he hadn't done any of those things. Atticus, he was real nice. His hands were under my chin, pulling up the cover, tucking it around me. Most people are, Scout, when you finally see them. He turned out the light and went into Jim's room. He would be there all night, and he would be there when Jim waked up in the morning. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.